So my presentation is about test anxiety. My essential question was, what can we do to help adolescents that suffer from this? What I'm going to talk about today is what is test anxiety, what are its symptoms as well as the effects it has on students, what are some possible warning signs, who suffers from test anxiety, are there any accommodations, and what can we do to help students? But first I'm going to show you a short clip of this film to give you an insight into what it's like for the student. She had been cheating on her test, and then she started to freak out that she was cheating because she had the test anxiety.
Cheated on question 1.
You cheated on question 1. You cheated on question 2. You cheated on question 3. You cheated on question 4. You cheated on question 5. Cheated.
All right, class, time is up. Please hand in your test. Serena? Come here, please.
Huxley, I know my test isn't finished.
You had the entire class.
I know. I'm sorry. I had a complete meltdown in there.
Serena,
Can I please come and do the test again after school? I can't get a 0. My parents would kill me.
no, it's not allowed.
Please, Miss Huxley.
Okay, so test anxiety is the fear of failing, and it prevents you from performing as well as you could on an exam. Some symptoms of it include a stomachache, sweating, shaking, loss of concentration, nervousness, and low self-esteem. The sweating and shaking and the stomachache are just classic symptoms of anxiety, because test anxiety is first and foremost an anxiety disorder. So what exactly are the effects on the students during the exam? According to research conducted by Dr. Jane Lawson, students suffering from test anxiety tended to words and stimuli that indicated a threat. So they paid more attention to words that were test or clock, something that were threatening to them. Students spent significantly more time scanning the room for threatening stimuli, so they would constantly be checking the clock, or they'd be looking around the room to see if anybody else is finished with their exam. In a test-anxious state, students suffer from an attentional bias to possible threats, which ultimately makes it impossible for them to focus. In the long term, if test anxiety is not addressed, students will lose interest in academics. They can have a severe fear of failure and suffer from low self-esteem because they believe that their scores on the tests are all that matters to them and all that matters about them. It's really hard for teachers to identify the warning signs of test anxiety before a high-stakes test. But some possible signs to look for include a lack of motivation for learning and procrastination. So if they're procrastinating studying for a test or doing something for a major assignment, that can be an indicator that they may be suffering from test anxiety. However, like I said, it's really hard to identify these symptoms beforehand. And yeah, it's almost impossible to do that. Statistically, though, almost 38% of students experience some form of test anxiety. Approximately 20% suffer from extreme or severe test anxiety, and another 18% suffer from moderate test anxiety. So, this anxiety disorder affects all calibers of students, and it's not always a result of poor study habits. You can have that kid at the top of the class who she's a perfectionist and is afraid to get anything below a B. That can be anxiety-inducing. Or you have the kid at the bottom that constantly fails and has test anxiety because of that. Accommodations. Officially, there are no accommodations for test anxiety, and it's not recognized by ADA, so it's not covered on 504 plans or IEPs. However, it is recognized by psychologists and teachers around the world, so something definitely needs to be done. Okay, so teachers can do several things to help. Now, you can do these with all of your students and not just those that are suffering from test anxiety, because they'll help everybody. First thing you should do is teach good study habits and teach test-taking skills. And another thing to do is during an exam, give the students a chance to move around, give them a break, because that'll help release endorphins and lower their stress levels. One thing that I do if I'm nervous about something, especially a test, is I'll write positive thoughts in a journal. And the more positive you are, the harder it is to be stressed out and anxious. And then there's the classic, make sure your students eat and sleep before an exam. And most importantly, make sure students understand that the tests do not determine their worth. So my plan of action to combat the effects of test anxiety this is just a first step. It's one small step. But I want to give students more frequent breaks during standardized tests, as well as eliminating time restrictions for all students. I believe if we do this, it'll help not only those suffering from test anxiety, but everybody. Thank you. And there's my references.